Here's one of the 20-inch extensions, and this one is a 20-inch extension, and this one is a multi-function extension that not only extends the length of the bed, but it also has a riser block that allows us to do outboard turning. And outboard turning is going to give us a little bit more than 18 inches in diameter. Let's go ahead, open this up, and we'll install this on the lathe as well. This will be the riser block right here. Also, there's a tool rest extender as well, so we can do outboard turning. These are both going to be used for outboard turning. And finally, the extension itself. All right, let's clear up our workspace. I'm going to wipe this one off with a rag and get ready to install it. Okay, we're just finishing wiping this piece off right now. Now this is a 20-inch multi-function extension, and what makes it multi-function is it's able to do a number of different tasks. We can mount it on the tailstock end of the lathe just to extend our bed by an additional 20 inches. I can do the same. I can mount it on the headstock end as well. And what's neat about mounting it is it has these really fantastic keyhole fasteners right here so that you can hang the bolts out and leave a little gap on the end of the bed of the lathe, and this just drops into place, and then you can tighten that from the inside. That way you're not supporting the full weight of this on your shoulder as you're trying to tighten it down. That makes it very easy to install. It can also be mounted low on the leg on the tailstock end, and then when we do that, it allows us to do outboard turning, and we'll install this riser block, and this riser block will allow us to keep our tailstock in play if we have a large out of balance piece, and it's nice to have some tailstock pressure when we do that. The first place that we're going to install this is we're going to install it right on the end of the lathe to show you what it looks like as a bed extension. It also has one other place to mount, and we'll show that in just a few moments here, and that's on the front of the leg, and that gives us some alternative positioning for our banjo and tool rest, and that's for some difficult to turn items where you might need additional positioning. So let's go ahead and take this, we'll grab our bolts, we'll go to the end of the lathe, and we'll drop this on as a bed extension. It also comes with one of the safety pins that can go on the end that limits your tailstock travel. I'll put that on right now while it's on the bench. Let me go start my bolts on the end of the lathe, and we'll come back and grab the extension. Now to install the 20-inch extension, I've removed the pins here on the end of the lathe that were for the swing-away extension so that we can install these bolts, and you'll see that it's pre-drilled here. It's also pre-drilled down here, and that'll be for our outboard turning. First we're going to show it just as a standard extension, and then we'll drop it down and we'll use it for outboard turning. These will just simply thread in by hand, and you want to leave plenty of room to drop your extension on. So I'll put those in like that. Let's get the extension and drop it on. And those little keyhole slots on the end will correspond with the bolt heads. That'll drop in. And now it can hang in place as I go through and tighten those down. Now that we've got the extension put on here, we've actually added some bed length to the lathe, you can see here. And you'll spend a few moments here just to make sure that it's perfectly aligned on the top and also on the inside of the ways. And this will allow us to move our tailstock right down to the end. I've got my extension pin down here, and I can bring this all the way out. And at full extension, rather than the 36 or the 48, now we've got a full 56 inches that we can turn inside here. We can also put one of these on the headstock end, and we'll show that in a few moments here, just to show you a few configurations of the lathe. Now that we've got this installed and you see how it works and where it bolts right here, I'm going to go through and move this one down to the lower position of the leg, and then we'll use the riser block for the tailstock and show you how you can use this for outboard turning. Okay, now I've done loosening the bolts. I'll lift the extension out of the way. That extension's heavy, like everything else on the lathe, so just make sure you're not straining yourself. I have to say that the fit and finish on this steel bed is flawless. I really enjoy using this. It's a lot better than other cast iron beds that I've used in the past. I'm just simply moving the bolts down to the second position on the leg. And this extension can be mounted at 4 different places around the lathe. We've got 1, we've got 2, we've got the headstock end, and then the face that we'll show you in a little bit. I'm going to run these into the cast iron leg. I'll try to get them as close as I can so that I don't have to tighten them too much with the wrench down below. So let's go ahead and run these in a little bit. And leaving a little bit of a gap. You really only need to hang the top 2 ones to get it hung on there correctly. Then my extension will drop on next. And I've left them a little bit snug. Let's back them off a little bit. And second try here. There we go. So this is in place. I'm going to go through and tighten these down right now, and then we'll get our extension to put on the end. Now that we've got the extension installed, let's go ahead and remove the safety pin because we're going to need to have it out of the way to put the extension block on, or the riser block. Let's take this over and we'll put it right onto the riser block right now. So that's ready to go. And again, we'll bring this back over. And this goes on just the same way that the tailstock and the banjo do. Now you can also put the safety pin right here so that this does not slide back. And for that, I'll just borrow one from one of my other locations here. And we'll put this in. So now I've got a safety pin here so my tailstock can't slide off. Now that we've got this installed, it'll allow us to go through and make the adjustments needed. You'll bring this forward and you'll see that there's a little bit of a gap right here. And what you want to do is, on the mounting bolts that are on the bottom, is loosen those and raise this up to where this is even with the end of the bed. And that'll let you easily transition your tailstock over, and it will also keep it on center line with the headstock. This will be an important adjustment that you'll need to do now with this in position. And we'll just loosen these bolts right here. And then this is actually easier to do if you have someone helping out here. So we'll go ahead and we'll raise this up a little bit here and snug these down. Now, one of the easiest ways I've found to level this off is just to go through and get it pretty close, get the tailstock slid over the gap, and then lock it down. And that's going to lock those 2 pieces together here. And this will get us really super close. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten the bottom bolts now. Okay. Now that I've got everything leveled off, I've moved the tailstock back over here on top of the riser block. And everything has really been thought out well in this lathe, and it's all comfortable to use. The riser block has its own lock handle that locks it to the bed, and every single handle on here is padded. That makes it really comfortable and easy to use. So I can unlock this, I can slide this back, and then lock it into position. Now, we will have to remove the riser block assembly to move the banjo down here so that our tool rest can get into this area. What this will allow us to do is, for outboard turning, is moving this back. We can do a large diameter turning in this area, and this will give us the room that we need to, and the tailstock will give us the support to hold our workpiece against the headstock. Now, to remove the riser block assembly, we'll unlock it. Again, we'll pull out the safety pin. I'll have this out just temporarily. And the riser block has actually got these cool molded in handles, and these were actually cast right into the riser block. That allows me to move it very easily because this thing now has gained some weight. So I've got it unlocked. I'm going to use these handles and slide it right off of the machine. Okay, you got that? All right, now that we've got the banjo in place, we'll simply put the riser block and the tailstock assembly back in place. Slide it in. Now this is locked in. We'll put the safety pin back on. You don't want this thing to fall down on your feet. That's why we're so careful about running these safety pins back in. All right, so now we can put this in place, lock it down. We've got our tool rest and banjo assembly in here so we can position this around our workpiece. But we're going to need to raise this back up to center line. So we'll remove the tool rest. And the lathe is supplied with an extension block. The extension block will drop right in place. then our tool rest will drop in the top. And you can actually lock this down with your Allen wrench right now and secure that, and then your entire adjustment is done right here at the bottom. So this will lock in place, this will lock in place and allow us to come back up to center line with our tool. This will be nice. This will be great for doing some bowls, some outboard platters, and other large pieces. And one thing I like to do to make it a little bit easier myself is I'll go ahead and I'll pull out this lock nut right here, or the lock bolt, and I'll drop it down and switch places with my ratchet handle. What's really nice here, you'll see these are a metal ratchet handle because you're going to be putting some force on these to secure the tool rest in place. So now that's locked in. I'll run the bolt in here, and that makes this extension part of my banjo assembly. And you want to lock this down real good. Okay, now that's secure. Now this puts my adjustment right here where I'm normally used to having it, so I can move this around, lock it in place, and it makes it real super easy to use. Now the entire banjo and riser block assembly move as one piece. Now to do outboard turning, we're going to use another feature of this lathe, and that's the sliding headstock. We'll simply unloosen this with the padded handle, slide the headstock right down here to the end, and you can position this wherever you need to. I like to line this up right here at the end to give me the maximum room over the gap for my work pieces. And you can slide it back or forward if you're using a chuck or if you're turning between centers. Now I'll lock this in place, and you can see that this is the perfect bowl lathe. Not only is it a great spindle lathe with the extensions, now I've got the perfect bowl lathe or platter lathe for large diameter pieces. All right, now that we've got the headstock slid down to that end for bolt turning, it gives me an opportunity to go through. I put these bolts in here, and I've got another one of these multi-function extensions. I'm going to go ahead and mount it up here on the headstock end of the lathe and get some additional length out of this. And once I've got this on and the headstock slid down here, I'll raise that other one up here and we'll show you another configuration and a couple of other uses for this multi-function extension. Okay, now we've got this extension tightened down, and I've already moved my safety pin over here. I'll go ahead and slide the headstock down. We'll get this out of the way so we can raise it back up on the other end. And you're normally not going to do this every single day, but we're showing you just a few configurations that you can do with this lathe. So, okay, now we've got the headstock moved down to this end, and it's locked in place, and you can see it's overhanging the lathe, but we've got plenty of support here. Let's go ahead and raise our other extension back up, and we'll show you this lathe in a long configuration. Okay, now we've got the tailstock back on with the extension. We'll thread our safety pin in. One quick note here, at the end of the bed and of the extensions, when that safety pin is in, you can actually bring the tailstock back a little bit over the end of the bed and lock it in. It gives you a little bit extra room here. So now that we've got this installed, you can see the gap on this thing is over 6 feet long. And we've got a lot of extension. I've got 20 extra inches on this end, 20 extra inches on this end. And again, just with the standard bed, standard legs, and 2 of the extensions, I've gone through and extended the lathe further out. I think we can make this thing longer. There's an extra option on here, and we're going to go through and install it right now. And that's a second bed and leg assembly. These are ordered separately, and you can actually extend this out. And again, this is probably good enough for a lot of different turnings, but if you're going to do a porch column, you're going to need some serious length. Let me grab an extra bed and an extra leg and show you what a real long lathe looks like.